Today is the fourth night. We are speaking on the Digha Nikaya. Tonight is the 19th of July, 2011, and we come to Digha Nikaya Sutta number 4, Sonadanda Sutta, about Sonadanda, qualities of a true Brahmin. This sutta is about the qualities of a true Brahmin. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was travelling among the Angas with a large company of some 500 monks, and he arrived at Champa. At Champa, he stayed by Gagara's lotus pond. At that time, the Brahmin Sonadanda was living at Champa, a populous place full of grass, timber, water and corn, which had been given to him by King Senia Bimbisara of Magadha as a royal gift and with royal powers. And the Brahmins and householders of Champa heard say, the ascetic Gotama of the Sakyans, who has gone forth from the Sakyan clan, is travelling among the Angas and is staying at Gagara's lotus pool. And concerning that blessed Lord Gotama, a good report has been spread about. This blessed Lord is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, perfected in knowledge and conduct, a well-farer, knower of the worlds, unequal trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, a Buddha, a blessed Lord. He proclaims this world with its gods, Maras, Brahmas, the world of ascetics and Brahmins with its princes and people, having come to know it by his own knowledge. He teaches a Dhamma that is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, and lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter. And he displays the fully perfected, thoroughly purified holy life. And indeed, it is good to see such Arahants. Thereupon the Brahmins and householders of Champa, leaving Champa in great crowds, in vast numbers, went to Gagara's lotus pond. Just then the Brahmin Sonadanda had gone up to his veranda for his midday rest. Seeing all the Brahmins and householders making for Gagara's lotus pond, he asked his steward the reason. And the steward said, Sir, it is the ascetic Gotama of the Sakyans, etc. That is why they are going to see him. And Sonadanda said, Well then, steward, go to the Brahmins and householders of Champa and say to them, Please wait, gentlemen. The Brahmin Sonadanda will come to see the ascetic Gotama. And the steward conveyed this message to the Brahmins and householders of Champa. Now at that time, some 500 Brahmins from various provinces were in Champa on some business, and they heard that Sonadanda intended to visit the ascetic Gotama. So they called upon him and asked if this was true. So it is, gentlemen, I am going to visit the ascetic Gotama, he said. And they said, Sir, do not visit the ascetic Gotama. It is not fitting that you should do so. If the Reverend Sonadanda goes to visit the ascetic Gotama, his reputation will decrease, and that of the ascetic Gotama will increase. This being so, it is not right that the Reverend Sonadanda should visit the ascetic Gotama, but rather the ascetic Gotama should visit him. The Reverend Sonadanda is well born on both the mother's and the father's side, of pure descent to the 7th generation, unbroken, of irreproachable birth, and therefore he should not call on the ascetic Gotama, but rather the ascetic Gotama should call on him. The Reverend Sonadanda is possessed of great wealth and resources. The Reverend Sonadanda is a scholar, versed in the mantras, accomplished in the 3 Vedas, a skilled expounder of the rules and rituals, and the law of sounds and meanings, and fifthly, oral tradition, an expounder, fully versed in natural philosophy and the marks of a great man. The Reverend Sonadanda is handsome, good-looking, pleasing, of the most beautiful complexion, in form and countenance like Brahma, of no mean appearance. He is virtuous, of increasing virtue, endowed with increasing virtue. He is well-spoken, of pleasing address, polite, of pure and clear enunciation, speaking to the point. He is the teacher's teacher of many, teaching the mantras to 300 youths, and many young men come from different districts and regions, seeking to learn the mantras in his presence, desirous to learn them from him. He is aged, grown old, venerable, advanced in years, long past his youth, whereas the ascetic Gotama is youthful and newly gone forth as a wanderer. The Reverend Sonadanda is esteemed, made much of, honored, revered, worshipped by King Senia Bimbisara and by the Brahmin Pokrasati. He lives at Champa, a populous place, full of grass, timber, water and corn, which has been given to him by King Senia Bimbisara of Magadha as a royal gift and with royal powers. This being so, it is not proper that he should visit the ascetic Gotama, but rather the ascetic Gotama should visit him. Stop here for a moment. You see, as usual, these Brahmins, during the Buddha's time, they looked down on all other castes. So they thought it was below the dignity of this Reverend Sonananda. He calls him Reverend because he was very old and very well known. So somebody who was revered. So these Brahmins told him not to go and see the Buddha Gotama because he's not of their clan. At this, Sonadanda replied, "Now listen, gentlemen, as to why it is fitting for us to visit the Reverend Gotama and why it is not fitting for him to visit us. The ascetic Gotama is well born on both sides, of pure descent to the 7th generation, unbroken, of irreproachable birth. Therefore it is fitting for us to visit him. He went forth, leaving a great body of kinsmen. In fact, he gave up much gold and wealth to go forth, both hidden away and openly displayed. The ascetic Gotama, while youthful, a black-haired youth, in the prime of his young days, in the first stage of life, went forth from the household life into homelessness, leaving his grieving parents weeping with tear-stained faces. Having cut off his hair and beard and put on yellow robes, he went forth into homelessness. He is handsome, virtuous, well-spoken, the teacher's teacher of many. He has abandoned sensuality and dispelled vanity. He teaches action or karma and the results of action, honoring the blameless Brahmana way of life. He is a wanderer of high birth, of a leading Katya family. He is a wanderer from a wealthy family, of great wealth and possessions. People come to consult him from foreign kingdoms and foreign lands. Many thousands of devas have taken refuge with him. This good report has been spread about him. This blessed Lord is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, perfected in knowledge and conduct, etc. He bears the 32 marks of a great man. He is welcoming, kindly of speech, courteous, genial, clear and ready of speech. He is attended by 4 assemblies, revered, honored, esteemed and worshipped by them. Many devas and humans are devoted to him. Whenever he stays in any town or village, that place is not troubled by non-human beings. He has a crowd, a multitude of followers, is a teacher of many. He is consulted by the chief of the various leaders of sects. It is not the way with the ascetic Gotama's reputation as it is with that of some ascetics and Brahmins, about whom this or that is reported. The ascetic Gotama's fame is based on his achievement of unsurpassed wisdom and conduct. Indeed, King Senia Bimbisara of Magadha has gone for refuge to him, together with his son, his wife, his followers and his ministers. So have King Pasenadi of Kosala and the Brahmin Pokrasati. He is revered, honored, esteemed and worshipped by them. The ascetic Gotama has arrived in Champa and is staying by Gagara's lotus pond, and whatever ascetics and Brahmins come to our territory are our guests, and we should revere, honor, esteem and worship guests. Having come to Gagara's lotus pond, the ascetic Gotama is such a guest and should be treated as such. Therefore, it is not proper that he should come to us, but rather we should go to him. However much I might praise the ascetic Gotama, that praise is insufficient. He is beyond all praise. On hearing this, the Brahmin said to Sonadanda, "Sir, since you praise the ascetic Gotama so much, then even if he were to live 100 yojanas from here, it would be fitting for a believing clansman to go with a shoulder bag to visit him. And so, sir, we shall all go to visit the ascetic Gotama." And so Sonadanda went with a large company of Brahmins to Gagara's lotus pond. Stop here for a moment. A yojana It's sometimes translated as a league, and it's supposed to be about 10 kilometers. 1 yojana is 10 kilometers. So 100 yojanas is 1,000 kilometers. So they say even if he were 1,000 kilometers away, we should walk with the shoulder back to visit him. But when Sonadanda had traversed the jungle thickets, he thought, if I ask the ascetic Gotama a question, he might say to me, that Brahmin is not a fitting question. It is not at all a fitting question. And then the company might despise me, saying, Sonadanda is a fool, he has no sense. He can't put a proper question to the ascetic Gotama. And if anyone were despised by this company, his reputation would suffer, and then his income would suffer, for our income depends on the gaining of a reputation. Or if the ascetic Gotama were to ask me a question, my answer might not satisfy him, and he might say, that is not the right way to answer this question. And then the company might despise me. And if, having come into the presence of the ascetic Gotama, I were to turn away without showing myself, this company might despise me. Then Sonadanda approached the Lord, exchanged courtesies with him, and sat down to one side. Some of the Brahmins and householders made obeisance to the Lord. Some exchanged courtesies with him. Some saluted him with joined palms. Some announced their name and clan. And some sat down to one side in silence. So Sonadanda took his seat with many thoughts going through his mind. If I ask the ascetic Gotama a question, he might say to me, that Brahmin is not a fitting question, etc. If only the ascetic Gotama would ask me a question from my own field of the three Vedas, then I could give him an answer that would satisfy him. And the Lord, reading his mind, thought, this Sonadanda is worried. Suppose I were to ask him a question from his own field as a teacher of the three Vedas. So he said to Sonadanda, by how many qualities do Brahmins recognize a Brahmin? How would one declare truthfully and without falling into falsehood, I am a Brahmin? Then Sonadanda thought, now what I wanted, hoped for, desired and longed for has happened. Now I can give him an answer that will satisfy him. Straightening up and looking round the assembly, he said, Reverend Gotama, there are 5 such qualities. What are they? A Brahmin is well born on both the mother's and the father's side, of pure descent to the 7th generation. He is a scholar versed in the mantras. He is handsome, pleasing. He is virtuous. He is learned and wise, and is the first or second to hold the sacrificial ladle. These are the 5 qualities of a true Brahmin. But if one of these qualities were omitted, could not one be recognized as a true Brahmin, being possessed of 4 of these qualities? And he said, it is possible, Gotama. We could leave out appearance, for what does that matter? If a Brahmin had the other 4 qualities, he could be recognized as a true Brahmin. And the Buddha said, but could not one of these 4 qualities be omitted, leaving 3 whereby one could be recognized as a true Brahmin? And he said, it is possible, Gotama. We could leave out the mantras, for what do they matter? If he had the other 3 qualities, he could be recognized as a true Brahmin. And then the Buddha said, but could not one of these 3 qualities be omitted? And he said, it is possible, Gotama. We could leave out birth, for what does that matter? If a Brahmin is virtuous, of increasing virtue, and if he is learned and wise, and is the first or second to hold the sacrificial ladle, then he can be recognized as a true Brahmin, and truthfully claim to be so. At this the Brahmin said to Sonadanda, don't say that, Sonadanda, don't say it. The Reverend Sonadanda is decrying appearance, the mantras and birth. He is actually adopting the ascetic Gotama's own words. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is leading him to delete one by one of these things. And he left out appearance. It doesn't matter if a Brahmin is handsome or not. He said it's not so important. Then secondly, he left out the mantras. Then thirdly, he left out the birth, which to a Brahmin is very important, the Brahmin birth. So all the Brahmins got annoyed. saying, you are saying exactly what he wants you to say. You are saying his own words. Then the Lord said to the Brahmins, if you think the Brahmin Sonadanda is not concentrating on his task, is using wrong words, is lacking in wisdom, and is not fit to converse with the ascetic Gotama, let him cease, and you talk to me. But if you think he is learned, speaks properly, is wise, and fit to converse with the ascetic Gotama, then you cease and let him speak. Then Sonadanda said to the Lord, let that be, Reverend Gotama, and be silent. I will answer in this matter. So he said, let me handle the Brahmins. To the Brahmins he said, do not say the Reverend Sonadanda is decrying appearance and adopting the ascetic Gotama's own words. I do not decry appearance, mantras or birth. Now at that time Sonadanda's nephew, a young man called Angaka, was sitting in the assembly, and Sonadanda said, gentlemen, do you see my nephew Angaka? Yes, sir. Angaka is handsome, good-looking, pleasing, of supremely fair complexion, in form and countenance like Brahma, of no mean appearance, and there is none in this assembly his equal except the ascetic Gotama. He is a scholar. I was his mantra teacher. He is well born on both sides. I know his parents. But if Angaka were to take life, take what is not given, commit adultery, tell lies, and drink strong drink, what would good looks or mantras or birth profit him? But it is because a Brahmin is virtuous, because he is wise, on account of these 2 points that he can truthfully declare, I am a Brahmin. And the Buddha said, but Brahmin, if one were to omit one of these 2 points, could one truthfully declare, I am a Brahmin? And he said, no, Gotama, for wisdom is purified by morality, and morality is purified by wisdom. Where one is, the other is. The moral man has wisdom, and the wise man has morality. And the combination of morality and wisdom is called the highest thing in the world. Just as one hand washes the other, or one foot the other, so wisdom is purified by morality, and this combination is called the highest thing in the world. Stop here for a moment. So you see this Sonadanda, people they respect him for a good reason. He's quite a smart guy. He can answer in this way. And the Buddha said, so it is, Brahmin. Wisdom is purified by morality, and morality is purified by wisdom. Where one is, the other is. The moral man has wisdom, and the wise man has morality, and the combination of morality and wisdom is called the highest thing in the world. But Brahmin, what is this morality and what is this wisdom? And he said, we only know this much, Gotama. It would be well if the Reverend Gotama were to explain the meaning of this. So he admits that he can only say so much. He cannot explain in detail what is this morality and this wisdom. And the Buddha said, then listen, Brahmin, pay proper attention and I will tell you. Yes, sir, said Sonadanda in reply. And the Lord said, Brahmin, Tathagata arises in this world, and Arahant, Sammasambuddha, endowed with wisdom and conduct, well-farer, knower of the worlds, incomparable trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. He, having realized it by his own super-knowledge, proclaims this world with its devas, maras and brahmas, its princes and people. He preaches the Dhamma, which is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter, and displays the fully perfected and purified holy life. A disciple goes forth and practices the moralities, etc. These are all described in Sutta number 2, which we went through. He guards the sense doors, etc. This is the list of all the practice in the holy life, or the conduct in the holy life, called charana. That Brahmin is morality. He attains the 4 jhanas. He attains various insights and the cessation of the asavas. Thus he develops wisdom. These the various insights refers to vijja. The other day we went through the suttas. We saw there were 8 sections in the this knowledge, under knowledge, vijja. That Brahmin is wisdom. So here we are not reading because You all can refer to that sutta number 2. The long list of charana and vijaya, conduct and knowledge. At these words, Sonadanda said, "Excellent Lord, excellent. It is as if someone were to set up what had been knocked down, or to point out the way to one who got lost, or to bring an oil lamp into a dark place, so that those with eyes could see what was there." Just so, the Blessed Lord has expounded the Dhamma in various ways, and I go for refuge to the Blessed Lord Gotama, to the Dhamma and to the Sangha. May the Reverend Gotama accept me from this day forth as a lay follower as long as life shall last, and may the Reverend Gotama and his order of monks accept a meal from me tomorrow. The Lord assented by silence. Then Sonadanda, seeing his assent, rose, saluted the Lord, passed by to his right, and departed. As day was breaking, he caused hard and soft food to be prepared in his own home, and when it was ready, he announced, "Reverend Gotama, it is time, the meal is ready." And the Lord, having risen early, went with robe and bowl, and attended by his monks, to Sonadanda's residence, and sat down on the prepared seat. And Sonadanda served the Buddha and his monks with the finest foods with his own hands until they were satisfied. And when the Lord had eaten and taken his hand away from the bowl, Sonadanda took a low stool and sat down to one side. Then he said to the Lord, "Reverend Gotama, if when I have gone into the assembly, I were to rise and salute the Lord, the company would despise me. In that case, my reputation would suffer. And if a man's reputation suffers, his income suffers. So if, on entering the assembly, I should join my palms in greeting, may the Reverend Gotama take it as if I had risen from my seat. And if on entering the assembly I should take off my turban, may you take it as if I had bowed at your feet. Or if when riding in my carriage I were to alight to salute the Lord, the company would despise me. So if when I am riding in my carriage I raise my goat, may you take it as if I had alighted from my carriage. And if I lower my hand, may you take it as if I had bowed my head at your feet." Then the Lord, having instructed Sonadanda with a talk on Dhamma, inspired him, fired him with enthusiasm, and delighted him, rose from his seat and departed. That's the end of the sutta. So you see, this Sonadanda still has a lot of pride. He doesn't want to show so much respect to the Buddha because the other Brahmins would despise him. Then in which case his income would suffer. This happens with a lot of people who are new to the Buddha Sasana, who are new to the Buddhist religion. They find it very difficult to bow to a monk. A lot of people are like that. And then after they learn the Dhamma more, then they appreciate the Dhamma enough to willingly bow to monks. So it's a matter of progression, and it takes time for a person to progress on the spiritual path. So you see this this Buddha, to recapitulate, the Buddha asked him the qualities of a Brahmin, and he talked about the 5 qualities. One is to be of pure descent, that means a Brahmin for 7 generations, 7 generations on the father and the mother side. Both sides also pure Brahmins, that's number 1. Secondly, possess of great wealth and resources. Is this what is it? Let me see. Let me see. Okay, paragraph 13. One is well born on the mother and father side, of pure descent for 7 generations. Number 2 is a scholar versed in the mantras. Number 3 is handsome and pleasing. Number 4 is virtuous. Number 5 is learned and wise, so that he's the first or second to hold the sacrificial ladle. So when the Buddha asked him to reduce these qualities, to see what is the real, the essential qualities to be a Brahmin, he started reducing one by one until he came to 2. that is morality and wisdom. And actually this morality and wisdom is actually the holy path itself. When you practice the holy path, the charana, the conduct or practice of the holy path is basically morality. And then the result of it is vijja. Vijja is the knowledge that arises from conduct, that arises from the practice of the holy life. So the wisdom is the end result. But there are very many levels. So all these are described. So basically, he's talking about the spiritual path and its result, but he cannot explain in detail because he has not attained all these levels. So the Buddha described in detail, then he was so impressed, became a disciple of the Buddha. And then later he told the Buddha that his reputation would suffer if he were to show too much respect to the Buddha. So he said, if I do this, then you take it that I do that. Now let's go to another sutta, Kutadanta Sutta. It's about sacrifice. Sutta number 5, Digha Nikaya. Thus have I heard, once the Lord was travelling through Magadha with a large company of some 500 monks, and he arrived at a Brahmin village called Kanumata, and there he stayed at the Ambalatika park. Now at that time the Brahmin Kutadanta was living at Kanumata, a populous place full of grass, timber, water and corn, which had been given to him by King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha as a royal gift and with royal powers. And Kutadanta planned a great sacrifice, 700 bulls, 700 bullocks, 700 heifers, 700 he-goats and 700 rams were all tied up to the sacrificial post. Stop here for a moment. He wants to get married, so he thought he make a great sacrifice to heaven. Sacrifice all these animals, kill them and offer to heaven, and then he will get a lot of blessings of merit. And this also happens with our Chinese, and those who follow the Taoists, they also like to kill animals and offer. Even up to today, Indians, they also kill animals and offer the blood and all that. And the Brahmins and householders of Kanumata heard say, the ascetic Gotama is staying at Ambalatika, and concerning that blessed Lord, a good report has been spread about. This blessed Lord is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, perfected in knowledge and conduct, welfarer, knower of the worlds, unequal trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, a Buddha, a blessed Lord. He proclaims this world with its gods, Maras and Brahmas, the world of ascetics and Brahmins with its princes and people, having come to know it by his own knowledge. He teaches a Dhamma that is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, and lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter. And he displays the fully perfected, thoroughly purified holy life. And indeed, it is good to see such Arahants. And at that, the Brahmins and householders, leaving Kanumata in great numbers, went to Ambalatika. Just then, Kutadanta had gone up to his veranda for his midday rest. Seeing all the Brahmins and householders making for Ambalatika, he asked his steward the reason. The steward replied, Sir, it is the ascetic Gotama, concerning whom a good report has been spread about. This blessed Lord is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, etc. That is why they are going to see him. Then Kutadanta thought, I have heard that the ascetic Gotama understands how to conduct successfully the triple sacrifice with its 16 requisites. Now I do not understand all this, but I want to make a big sacrifice. Suppose I were to go to the ascetic Gotama and ask him about the matter. So he sent his steward to the Brahmins and householders of Kanumata to ask them to wait for him. And at that time, several hundred Brahmins were staying at Kanumata, intending to take part in Kutadanta's sacrifice. Hearing of his intention to visit the ascetic Gotama, they went and asked him if this were true. So it is, gentlemen, I am going to visit the ascetic Gotama. And they said, Sir, do not visit the ascetic Gotama. And this is exactly as the previous sutta, where they tried to discourage him from visiting the Buddha. Then Kutadanta said to the Brahmins, "Now listen, gentlemen, as to why it is fitting for us to visit the Reverend Gotama and why it is not fitting for him to visit us." And here follows also exactly what we heard in the previous sutta. He gives all the reasons why he should go to the Buddha and not the Buddha come to him. On hearing this, the Brahmin said, "Sir, since you praise the ascetic Gotama so much, then even if he were to live 100 yojanas from here, it would be fitting for a believing clansman to go with a shoulder bag to visit him. And sir, we shall all go to visit the ascetic Gotama." And so Kutadanta went with a large company of Brahmins to Ambalatika. He approached the Lord, exchanged courtesies with him, and sat down to one side. Some of the Brahmins and householders of Kanumata made obeisance to the Lord. Some exchanged courtesies with him. Some saluted him with joined palms. Some announced their name and clan. And some sat down to one side in silence. Sitting to one side, Kutadanta addressed the Lord. "Reverend Gotama, I have heard that you understand how to conduct successfully the triple sacrifice with its 16 requisites. Now I do not understand all this, but I want to make a big sacrifice. It would be well if the ascetic Gotama were to explain this to me." And the Buddha said, "Then listen, Brahmin, pay proper attention and I will explain." "Yes, sir," said Kutadanta. And the Lord said, "Brahmin, once upon a time there was a king called Mahavijita. He was rich, of great wealth and resources, with an abundance of gold and silver, with possessions and requisites of money and money's worth, with a full treasury and granary. And when King Mahavijita was musing in private, the thought came to him, I have acquired extensive wealth in human terms. I occupy a wide extent of land which I have conquered. Suppose now I were to make a great sacrifice which would be to my benefit and happiness for a long time." And calling his minister chaplain, he told his thought, "I want to make a big sacrifice. Instruct me, Reverend Sir, how this may be to my lasting benefit and happiness." This minister chaplain here refers to the Brahmin advisor. These kings, they like to have a Brahmin advisor because these Brahmins, they know very powerful mantras. So here is called the chaplain. The chaplain replied, Your Majesty's country is beset by thieves. It is ravaged. Villages and towns are being destroyed. The countryside is infested with brigands. If Your Majesty were to tax this region, that would be the wrong thing to do. Suppose Your Majesty were to think, I will get rid of this plague of robbers by executions and imprisonment, or by confiscation, threats and banishment. The plague would not be properly ended. Those who survived would later harm Your Majesty's realm. However, with this plan you can completely eliminate the plague. To those in the kingdom who are engaged in cultivating crops and raising cattle, let Your Majesty distribute grain and fodder. To those in trade, give capital. To those in government service, assign proper living wages. Then those people, being intent on their own occupations, will not harm the kingdom. Your Majesty's revenues will be great. The land will be tranquil and not beset by thieves. And the people with joy in their hearts will play with their children and will dwell in open houses. And saying, so be it, the king accepted the chaplain's advice. He gave grain and fodder, capital to those in trade, proper living wages, and the people with joy in their hearts dwelt in open houses. Stop here for a moment. So here, what is advised to the king is actually very good principles for a government, how a government should govern the people. Those who are farmers, give them grain to plant and fodder to feed their cattle. And those who are doing business, give them money. Those who are working for the government, give them proper wages, etc. Then King Mahavijita sent for the chaplain and said, I have got rid of the plague of robbers. Following your plan, my revenue has grown. The land is tranquil and not beset by thieves. And the people with joy in their hearts play with their children and dwell in open houses. Now I wish to make a great sacrifice. Instruct me as to how this may be done. to my lasting benefit and happiness. For this, sire, you should send for your Khattiyas from town and country, your advisors and counselors, the most influential Brahmins and the wealthy householders of your realm, and say to them, I wish to make a great sacrifice. Assist me in this, gentlemen, that it may be to my lasting benefit and happiness. The king agreed and did so. Sire, let the sacrifice begin. Now is the time, your majesty. These 4 assenting groups will be the accessories for the sacrifice. Let's stop here for a moment. These 4 assenting groups must be these 4 types of people. The Khattiyas, the Brahmins, the wealthy householders, and the ordinary folk, I guess. And the Buddha said, King Mahavijita is endowed with 8 things. He is well born on both sides, number 1. Number 2, he is handsome, of no mean appearance. Number 3, he is rich, with a full treasury and granary. Number 4, he is powerful, having a 4-branch army that is loyal, dependable, making bright his reputation among his enemies. Number 5, he is a faithful giver and host, not shutting his door against ascetics, Brahmins and wayfarers, beggars and the needy, a fountain of goodness. Number 6, he is very learned in what should be learned. Number 7, he knows the meaning of whatever is said, saying, this is what that means. Number 8, he is a scholar, accomplished, wise, competent to perceive advantage in the past, the future, or the present. King Mahavijita is endowed with these 8 things. These constitute the accessories for the sacrifice. The Brahmin chaplain is endowed with 4 things. 1, he is well born. Number 2, he is a scholar, versed in the mantras. Number 3, he is virtuous, of increasing virtue, endowed with increasing virtue. Number 4, he is learned, accomplished and wise, and is the first or second to hold the sacrificial ladle. He has these 4 qualities. These constitute the accessories to the sacrifice. Then prior to the sacrifice, the Brahmin chaplain taught the king the 3 modes. It might be, your majesty, your majesty might have some regrets about the intended sacrifice. 1, I am going to lose a lot of wealth. Or 2, during the sacrifice, I am losing a lot of wealth. Or 3, after the sacrifice, thinking I have lost a lot of wealth. In such cases, your majesty should not entertain such regrets. Then prior to the sacrifice, the chaplain dispelled the king's qualms with 10 conditions for the recipient. Sire, there will come to the sacrifice those who take life and those who abstain from taking life. To those who take life, so will it be to them. But those who abstain from taking life will have a successful sacrifice and will rejoice in it, and their hearts may be calm within. There will be those who take what is not given, and those who refrain, those who indulge in sexual misconduct, and those who refrain, those who tell lies, and those who do not, those who indulge in calumny, harsh and frivolous speech, and those who do not, those who are covetous, and those who are not, those who harbor ill will, and those who are not, who do not, those who have wrong views, and those who have right views. To those who have wrong views, it will turn out accordingly, but those who have right views will have a successful sacrifice and will rejoice in it, and their hearts may be calm within. So the chaplain dispelled the king's doubts with 10 conditions. These 10 conditions, stop here. These 10 conditions refers to the 10 good karmas, the 3 body karmas, to abstain from killing, from taking what is not given, and adultery, and or sexual misconduct. And then the 4 speech is those who don't tell lies, who don't. The second is those here it says calumny or slander. Actually, it means not to carry tales, not to carry tales, cause disharmony. Number 3 is harsh speech, not to engage in harsh speech. Number 4, not to engage in frivolous speech. And then 3 more are mental good karmas, not covetous, and do not have ill will, and thirdly, to have right view, to have right view. Right view means believing in karma, believing there are realms of rebirth, and that there are holy men. So these are the 10 conditions. So the chaplain instructed the king, who was making the great sacrifice with 16 reasons, urged him, inspired him, and gladdened his heart. Someone might say, King Mahavijita is making a great sacrifice, but he has not invited his Katyas, his advisors and counselors, the most influential Brahmins and wealthy householders. So these four, earlier we talked about the four, the four ascending groups. These are the four ascending groups here. One is the warriors, the Katyas. Secondly, advisors and counselors. 3 influential Brahmins, and 4 householders, wealthy householders. So there are 4 things here. But such words would not be in accordance with the truth, since the king has invited them. Thus the king may know that he will have a successful sacrifice and rejoice in it, and his heart will be calm within. Or someone might say, King Mahavijita is making a great sacrifice, but he is not well born on both sides, etc. So these are the 8 things that we went through just now. One is well born on both sides for 7 generations. Number 2, handsome. Number 3, rich. And number 4, powerful with a big army. Number 5, a faithful giver and host. Number 6, very learned. Number 7, knows the meaning of what is said. Number 8, a scholar. Competent to perceive advantage in the past, future, or present. These are the 8 things. Or someone might say his chaplain is not well born, etc. So these are the 4 things about the chaplain. The chaplain is endowed with 4 things. He is well born, he is a scholar. Number 3, he is virtuous. Number 4, he is learned. Thus the chaplain instructed the king with 16 reasons. These are the 16 reasons. 4 is the 4 types of people to invite. 8 is the 8 conditions that the king is endowed with. And the last 4 is the 4 things the chaplain is endowed with. In this sacrifice, Brahmin, no bulls were slain, no goats or sheep, no cocks or pigs, nor were various living beings subjected to slaughter, nor were trees cut down for sacrificial posts, nor were grasses mown for the sacrificial grass. And those who are called slaves or servants or workmen did not perform their tasks for fear of blows or threats, weeping and in tears. But those who wanted to do something did it. Those who did not wish to do did not. They did what they wanted to do and not what they did not want to do. The sacrifice was carried out with ghee, oil, butter, curds, honey, and molasses. Let's stop here for a moment. So here in this sacrifice, which was advised by the great chaplain, there was no slaughter of animals. People were not forced to do. And basically the things that they offered were these things that were considered good, valuable things during the time. Ghee, oil, butter, curds, honey, and molasses. These are also considered medicinal foods in the monks' Vinaya. Then Brahmin, the Katyas, the ministers and councillors, the influential Brahmins, the wealthy householders of town and country, having received a sufficient income, came to King Mahavijita and said, "We have brought sufficient wealth, Your Majesty, please accept it." And the king said, "But gentlemen, I have collected together sufficient wealth. Whatever is left over, you take away." At the king's refusal, they went away to one side and consulted together. "It is not right for us to take this wealth back to our own homes. The king is making a great sacrifice. Let us follow his example." Then the Katyas put their gifts to the east of the sacrificial pit. The advisors and councillors set theirs to the south, the Brahmins to the west, and the wealthy householders to the north. And in this sacrifice no bulls were slain, nor were living beings subjected to slaughter. Those who wanted to do something did it. Those who did not wish to did not. The sacrifice was carried out with ghee, oil, butter, curds, honey, and molasses. Thus there were the 4 assenting groups, and King Mahavijita was endowed with 8 things. and the chaplain with 4 things in 3 modes. This Brahmin is called the 16 successful sacrifice in 3 modes. Stop here for a moment. So you see, even the Brahmins themselves don't know this tradition that was handed down from Brahmins, but the Buddha can describe so well. By the way, if next time your parents or your relatives want to pray to heaven, ask them to offer ghee, oil, butter, curds, honey and molasses. At this, the Brahmins shouted loudly and noisily, "What a splendid sacrifice! What a splendid way to perform a sacrifice!" But Kutadanta sat in silence, and the Brahmins asked him why he did not applaud the ascetic Gotama's fine words. He replied, "It is not that I do not applaud them. My head would split open if I did not. But it strikes me that the ascetic Gotama does not say, 'I have heard this,' or it must have been like this. But he says, 'It was like this,' or like that at the time. And so, gentlemen, it seems to me that the ascetic Gotama must have been at that time either King Mahavijita, the Lord of the sacrifice, or else the Brahmin chaplain who conducted the sacrifice for him. Does the Reverend Gotama acknowledge that he performed, or caused to be performed, such a sacrifice, and that in consequence at death, after the breaking up of the body, he was reborn in a good sphere, a heavenly state?" And the Buddha said, "I do, Brahmin. I was the Brahmin chaplain who conducted that sacrifice." Stop here for a moment. So you see, the Kutadanta is suspected that the Buddha must have been either the king or the chaplain at that time, and the Buddha admitted. And Reverend Gotama, is there any other sacrifice that is simpler, less difficult, more fruitful and profitable than this threefold sacrifice with its 16 attributes? And the Buddha said, "There is, Brahmin." So here you see this Kutadanta, when he heard about this sacrifice, it seems to him very complicated. So many things, so many conditions must fulfill. 4 and 8 and 4 and 3 modes some more. So he says, is there another way, more simple and yet more fruitful? And he asked, "What is it, Reverend Gotama?" And the Buddha said, "Wherever regular family gifts are given to virtuous ascetics, these constitute a sacrifice more fruitful and profitable than that." "Why, Reverend Gotama, and for what reason is this better?" And the Buddha said, "Brahmin, no arahants or those who have attained the arahant path will attend such a sacrifice." "Why? Because there they see beatings and throttlings, so they do not attend. But they will attend a sacrifice at which regular family gifts are given to virtuous ascetics, because there are no beatings or throttlings. That is why this kind of sacrifice is more fruitful and profitable." Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying, instead of praying to heaven, you will get more blessings or merit if you give regularly to those monks or ascetics who pass by the house, who come and beg for their food. You give to them regularly. That is very meritorious. That's why you see in Buddhist countries like Thailand, they have such a tradition that when we go on alms round Pindabat, as soon as the sun breaks, the monks go around begging for their food. And you see these old ladies sitting outside their house waiting, even before the sunlight comes up. They have a small table, they put their rice and their food, which they pack into small plastic containers, are all wrapped up. And sometimes even flowers and candles. So when the monk comes, they will scoop 1 or 2 ladles of rice, and then each monk they'll give one offering, 1 packet of food, and sometimes a flower to bring back to put on the altar. So it's a very good practice. If they do this long term, it's very meritorious. After all, when they do the sacrifice, they offer all this food to the devas. The devas don't eat, but the monks eat. At least they benefit. But Reverend Gotama, is there any other sacrifice that is more profitable than either of these? And the Buddha said, "There is, Brahmin." "What is it, Reverend Gotama?" "Brahmin, if anyone provides shelter for the Sangha coming from the 4 quarters, that constitutes a more profitable sacrifice." Stop here for a moment. So here, higher than the merit of giving food to the monks is to provide shelter, that means living quarters, in other words, like building a monastery. Of all the material offerings, building, giving land, or in some way providing shelter, that means living quarters, especially a monastery for monks coming from the four directions, north, south, east, west. That means long term. And if you build, for example, a monastery, if the monastery lasts for 500 years, then during that period of 500 years, all the monks and all the people who make use of the monastery are benefited. So that's why it's very meritorious. And besides, if there is the Sangha of monks, then the Dhamma will last in the world. If there is no Sangha, then slowly the Dhamma will also disappear. And then there will not be any holy men around. But Reverend Gotama, is there any sacrifice that is more profitable than these three? There is, Brahmin. What is it, Reverend Gotama? Brahmin, if anyone with a pure heart goes for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, that constitutes a sacrifice more profitable than any of these. Stop here for a moment. So you see, if a person does not believe in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, they can still do dana, they can still offer land to a monastery. But the Buddha here says, more meritorious than these two is believing in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. For you to believe, take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, basically it means that you understand the Dhamma. If you don't understand some basic Dhamma, you would not take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. So that's why it's more meritorious. But Reverend Gotama, is there any sacrifice that is more profitable than these four? There is, Brahmin. What is it, Reverend Gotama? Brahmin, if anyone with a pure heart undertakes the precepts to refrain from taking life, from taking what is not given, from sexual immorality, from lying speech, and from taking strong drink and sloth-producing drugs, that constitutes a sacrifice more profitable than any of these four. Stop here for a moment. So you can see here that keeping the precepts is more meritorious than the previous. The previous, you do good, you benefit people. But if you don't understand the Dhamma, then you might still go hunting. There's some people, they do a lot of philanthropy, good charity, a lot of charity, but still they go hunting and shoot wild boar and all that. But if you undertake the precepts, then you don't harm other living beings. That's why it's more meritorious. But Reverend Gotama, is there any sacrifice that is more profitable than these five? There is, Brahmin. What is it, Reverend Gotama? Brahmin, a Tathagata arises in this world, Arahan, Samasambuddha, etc. He, having realized by his own super knowledge, proclaims this world with its devas, maras and brahmas. He preaches the Dhamma, which is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, lovely in its ending. And a disciple goes forth and practices the moralities. Then he is perfected in morality and attains the four jhanas. These are the various stages of the practice of the holy life, charana or conduct. That Brahmin is a sacrifice more profitable. Then he attains various insights, ending in the cessation of the corruptions or asavas. And this refers to the 8 knowledges gained from the practice of the holy life, the various psychic powers, and culminating in the destruction of the asavas, meaning liberation or enlightenment. And the Buddha says, he knows there is nothing further in this world. That Brahmin is a sacrifice that is simpler, less difficult, more fruitful, and more profitable than all the others. And beyond this, there is no sacrifice that is greater or more perfect. So here the Buddha is saying the highest highest merit you can achieve is to practice the holy life, go through all the various practices of the holy life and attain all the knowledges, and finally liberation or enlightenment, meaning destruction of the asavas. And there is nothing greater or more perfect, more meritorious than this. Danta said, Excellent, Reverend Gotama, excellent. It is as if someone were to set up what had been knocked down, or to point out the way to one who got lost, or to bring an oil lamp into the dark place so that those with eyes could see what was there. Just so the Reverend Gotama has expounded the Dhamma in various ways. May the Reverend Gotama accept me as a lay follower from this day forth as long as life shall last. And Reverend Gotama, I set free the 700 bulls, 700 bullocks, 700 heifers, 700 he-goats, and 700 rams. I grant them life. Let them be fed with green grass and be given cool water to drink, and let cool breezes play upon them. Then the Lord delivered a graduated discourse to Kutadanta on generosity, on morality and on heaven, showing the danger, degradation and corruption of sense desires, and the profit of renunciation. And when the Lord knew that Kutadanta's mind was ready, pliable, free from the hindrances, joyful and calm, then he preached a sermon on Dhamma in brief, on suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And just as a clean cloth from which all stains have been removed receives the dye perfectly, so in the Brahmin Kutadanta, as he sat there arose the pure and spotless Dhamma eye, and he knew whatever things have an origin must come to cessation. Then Kutadanta, having seen, attained, experienced and penetrated the Dhamma, having passed beyond doubt, transcended uncertainty, having gained perfect confidence in the teacher's doctrine without relying on others, said, "May the Reverend Gotama and his Sangha of monks accept a meal from me tomorrow." Stop here for a moment. So here you see, very often in the suttas, when a person listens to the Dhamma with proper attention or careful attention, which is yoniso manasikara, then he understands. And when he understands, he has passed beyond doubt, transcended uncertainty, gained perfect confidence in the Buddha's Dhamma. So which means he has attained stream entry. Stream entry always in the suttas is attained by this way. And I met a person who said he read, somebody said, wrote that maybe when you listen to the Dhamma, you can attain stream entry, but not studying the books. But if you think carefully, I think studying the books, the suttas, are as good as listening to the Buddha talking to you, because these are the exact words of the Buddha. In fact, if you think about it, I think reading the book is even better. Why? Because if you listen to the Buddha's words, you just listen once, and if you don't catch it, the Buddha is already talking about something else. Whereas you read the book, you can read it over and over again. You can take your time to digest. You can read it 1,000 times, you can read it 2,000 times if you like. And slowly, because you read slowly, you have more time to digest the words rather than listen to the Buddha. The Buddha will only speak once. What is past is past. So unless your mind is very sharp, you just listen once, you can catch the meaning of what the Buddha says. Then you understand and you attain stream entry. But if you have the book in front of you, exactly the Buddha's words, you take your time to digest what is every sentence you read. You take your time to digest every word the Buddha says. You take your time to slowly understand. So to me, reading the book is even better than listening to the Buddha just once. Unless like nowadays you have the CD, you can listen again and again as many times as you want. In which case it's as good as reading the book. So it's not like some people say, and some people they only talk about meditation, and if you say you can attain stream entry by reading the book or listening to the suttas, they say that is only book knowledge. Yes, book knowledge, but that's how people attain the stream entry. You look at the suttas and the Vinaya, they just listen to the Buddha once only, and they attain stream entry. That is book knowledge, The Lord assented by silence. Then Kutadanta, seeing his consent, rose, saluted the Lord, passed by to his right and departed. As day was breaking, he caused hard and soft food to be prepared at his place of sacrifice. And when it was ready, he announced, "Reverend Gotama, it is time. The meal is ready." And the Lord, having risen early, went with robe and bowl, and attended by his monks to Kutadanta's place of sacrifice, and sat down on the prepared seat. And Kutadanta served the Buddha and his monks with the finest foods with his own hands until they were satisfied. And when the Lord had eaten and taken his hand away from the bowl, Kutadanta took a low stool and sat down to one side. And the Lord, having instructed Kutadanta with the talk on Dhamma, fired him with enthusiasm and delighted him, rose from his seat and departed. That's the end of the sutta. So here is telling us, this sutta is telling us how to make a proper sacrifice. If you want to make pray to heaven, you do it with these 16 modes and all that. But if you want something more meritorious and simpler, then either you give food to wandering monks regularly, whatever ascetics come to your home, you give them. That is more beneficial. Or like some people, they go to the monastery to offer food regularly. The thing is, the notice here is regular. Regular family gifts are given to virtuous ascetics. If you give once in a blue moon, it's not so meritorious. This is very regular. Then higher than this is providing shelter for the Sangha from the 4 directions. That means any monk can come, for example, to build a monastery. In Thailand, because people know this, many people want to offer land. In Malaysia, it's very hard to find somebody who wants to offer land to build a monastery. When I had intentions to build a monastery, nobody offered me any. But in Thailand, once I went to this forest monastery, and this deputy abbot, I was talking to him. He told me they have, 5 or 12 branch monasteries. And he said many people still want to offer land, but they dare not accept because their Sangha will be spread too thin. Too few monks, so they don't have so many monks to go around, so they don't want to accept all the land that is offered to them. Then higher than all these material gifts is to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And higher than that is to undertake the precepts, refrain from harming any beings. So you notice here carefully, Dana is lower than Sila. Dana, first is the sacrifice. Higher than the sacrifice is regular giving of food to monks who go Pindabat. Higher than that is to provide a land for a monastery. And then higher than that is going for refuge. And then higher than that is to keep the Sila. So Sila is much higher than Dana. But higher than all this is going forth, becoming a monk and practicing the charana, the various stages of conduct or practice of the holy life, and as a result attain the various knowledges that come under Vijja. The Buddha is called Vijja Charana Sampanno, perfect in conduct and knowledge. The Buddha has perfected the conduct of the holy life, the practice of the holy life, and also the knowledges. The Buddha has all the knowledges. So that is the highest. There is nothing higher than attaining arahanthood. But even if you don't attain arahanthood, if you listen, if you read the Nikayas, listen to the sutta talks again and again, constantly, and you understand, you attain stream entry, that is good enough. No more, you will no more be reborn into woeful plains once you become an Arya. Then you are secure already, you're not afraid of samsara anymore, you're not afraid of rebirth anymore. A lot of people, when they are dying at the last moment, full of fear because they are going to be reborn into a woeful plane of existence. Okay, we have taken about 1 hour. Anything to discuss? Very good. Tonight you can cover 2 Digha Nikaya long discourses in 1 hour. But these two discourses are not very deep. Not very deep. Both also about Brahmins. Actually, in the Vinaya books, a layman can become an Arahant. But it is very rare. If a layman becomes an Arahant, it means in his previous life he had already attained the 4 jhanas. We find in the Vinaya books when the Buddha, after the Buddha was enlightened and he wanted to seek disciples, he would use his heavenly eye to look out for people. And I believe that he will look out for those who have attained the 4 jhanas first. So there was a man called Yasa. He was a family man with at least 4 wives, very wealthy. And every night the slave girls will dance for him and sing and dance for him. And then he will be enjoying himself, drinking liquor and all that, and watching them sing and dance until he falls asleep. And then when he falls asleep, those girls have danced for so long, they're so tired, they sleep on the floor. So one night this happened, and the Buddha used the psychic power to make him wake up in the middle of the night. So when he woke up, he saw all these slaves sleeping on the ground, half naked, their hair disheveled, and this saliva flowing and all these things. So it reminded him of corpses. Probably in his previous life he had contemplated corpses. So when he saw, immediately struck him dukkha. So he didn't want to see, walked out of the house. And the Buddha must have used the psychic power to attract him. So he kept walking up to the gate. Normally the city gates are closed at night, right? But when he reached the city gates opened. And then he walked out of the city gates, continued walking until he came to the forest where the Buddha was waiting for him. So he came to the Buddha and also said, dukkha, dukkha. In the middle of the night, probably he was also blur, half asleep. So the Buddha said, Yasa, sit down here. There is no dukkha here. So when he heard the Buddha say there's no dukkha here, happily he sat down. Then the Buddha taught the Dhamma to him. Basically about the 4 Noble Truths. What I have tried to copy in my book called The Message of the Buddha. So when he heard the Buddha's teaching on the 4 Noble Truths, he attained stream entry. The next morning, the father came looking for him because the family is very wealthy. So the father was worried and might have been kidnapped or something. And the mother was worried sick. So the father walked and found his slippers halfway. So followed his sandals or slippers to the forest where the Buddha was waiting. And Yasa was sitting beside the Buddha. And the Buddha used a psychic power so that the father could not see the son. So the father came to ask the Buddha whether he had seen Yasa. And the Buddha said, you sit down, in a short while you'll probably see Yasa. So when he heard the Buddha say, you'll be able to see Yasa in a short while, he quickly sat down. So the Buddha talked to him the same discourse about the 4 Noble Truths. Hearing it for the first time, the father attained stream entry. And Yasa, hearing it a second time, attained arahanthood. Then after that, the Buddha took away the shield. And then the father saw the son. And the father told the son, your mother is pining for you. You better quickly go home. The mother is all upset. So the Buddha told the father, said, Yasa is a different person. He cannot go home anymore. Then the father realized. So since the father himself had attained the Dhamma eye, so the father realized. So the father accepted it. So after that, Yasa became a monk. So once a lay person attains arahanthood, he will no more want to go home. That self, that lay self, has died. That's why the Buddha says his disciples are born from his mouth. When a person renounces, the lay person has died. The lay person that he was has died. He's like reborn again, a different person. And the Buddha says, we are Sakya Putta, sons of the Sakyan. We are born from the Buddha's mouth. Why born from the Buddha's mouth? Because the Buddha, from his mouth, preached the Dhamma to us, and we listen to the Dhamma from the Buddha's mouth, and we become a totally different person. We are reborn. We renounce and reborn. So you see, from there, a lay person can become an arahant. But after that, he does not go back to the lay life anymore.
There are paintings given to the Buddha, but the Buddha he used one. That is the Tathagata. What is the meaning of Tathagata and why he used all these?
Tathagata. Gata is gone. And Tata is dasa. Das. The ruler. Ru putong, the ruler. So in Chinese, this Tathagata, I think is, my opinion is thus gone one. But sometimes they say this gata, Tathagata is Tata agata. So they say thus come one. So in Chinese they say thus come one. But I think thus gone one is more logical because the Buddha has gone, is no more what he was. The self has gone. It depends. If a person has attained very strong samadhi, then he rests in the samadhi. Like the Buddha says that there are different types of postures. The lion posture is to lie down on your right side and sleep. And then to lie down on your left side and sleep is the luxurious posture. To lie flat and sleep is the ghost posture. And the Buddha said the Buddha posture is to enter the jhanas. So the Buddha, when he enters the jhana, he charges himself. But even then, the Buddha has to lie down. Sometimes when he speaks to his disciples and he feels a bit tired, but the monks are still fresh, they are not sleepy, and he asks another disciple like Sariputta to take over and give a talk to the monks. He says, my back aches, I need to lie down. And then he will lie down. But when he lies down, he's still awake. In the monks' Vinaya, an arahant cannot be faulted at one. Arahant cannot be said, cannot be accused of doing any wrong. Why? Because an arahant is mindful 24 hours a day. Arahant has sati 24 hours a day. So, in other words, even when an arahant rests, he is mindful. So, an arahant to me does not sleep like we do. An arahant does not dream. Why? Because an arahant has destroyed the flow of these uncontrolled mental outflows. That's why I call asava uncontrolled mental outflows. As long as you are not enlightened, you cannot control your asavas, your outflows of the mind. The mind tends to think, tends to daydream, tends to night dream. But an arahant has destroyed this flow. When an arahant thinks, it is purposeful. It is controlled outflow. Arahant can also think. Arahant also can have emotion, but all control. So he does not sleep like an ordinary person. So because an arahant, his mind is so strong, that he does not sleep like ordinary people. He's mindful 24 hours a day. So unless you have attained the 4 jhanas, how can you be mindful 24 hours a day? Nowadays you find a lot of meditation teachers, they say sleep mindfully. How to sleep mindfully if you don't have a 4th jhana? Once you sleep, you are no more mindful. Bang tua chia liao. Gone, don't know where. Yeah, I agree. That's why I spoke those 3 Nikayas first. The Anguttara Nikaya is short discourses, and a lot of the discourses in the Anguttara Nikaya concern lay people. So that's why I generally encourage people to listen to the Anguttara Nikaya first. And then the 2 most important Nikayas to me are the Samyutta Nikaya and the Majjhima Nikaya. The Samyutta Nikaya has 56 chapters dealing with all the important topics of the spiritual path, the Bodhipakya Dhammas. So a lot of people, for example, on Satipatthana, they say the Satipatthana Sutta is very important, and they study the Satipatthana Sutta and they think they understand Satipatthana. From one sutta, I don't believe they understand Satipatthana. But if you study the Satipatthana Samyutta, there are so many suttas there describing Satipatthana from various viewpoints. If you study that, all the suttas in the Satipatthana Samyutta, then you have a much better understanding of Satipatthana than just studying the Satipatthana Sutta. So the deepest Samyutta, I believe, is the Nikaya is the Samyutta Nikaya, and the Majjhima Nikaya also is very, very beneficial for somebody who wants to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. It also goes into detail. The least important is this of the 4 Nikayas is the Digha Nikaya. And Kudaka Nikaya, there are 15 books according to Sri Lanka and Thailand and maybe Laos and Cambodia. But the Burmese, they added 3 more books in 1956 when they celebrated 2,500 years of the Buddha Sasana. And they know, and everybody knows, that these 3 books they added are not the Buddha's words, and still they added these. That's why the other countries don't recognize. The other countries only recognize 15 books. But even then, out of the 15 books, only 6 are reliable because the 6 books in the Kudaka Nikaya, they do not contradict the earlier 4 Nikayas. And these 6 books, I hope to talk on these 6 books after the Digha Nikaya, this Vasa. If possible, I'd like to finish all these 6 books. The 6 books are the Dhammapada, the Sutta Nipata, Udana, Itivuttaka, the Theragata, and the Therigata. So only these 6 books are important in the Kudaka Nikaya, and some of them like the Sutta Nipata, some of the suttas there are very are among the original suttas. Yeah? Very old suttas. And also very, very. It's not that they are very deep, but they are very very good for a renunciant, very inspiring. Even like the Theragata and Therigata, they are very inspiring to see how the Arahants struggle. You find some of the Arahants were just like us. Their mind was giving them a lot of trouble, very disturbed mind. Somebody like Talaputta, he kept reasoning with his mind. He said, mind, you asked me to renounce, you told me when you go up the hill, stay alone, you find happiness and all that, and now you're giving me so much trouble. And he kept talking with his own mind, and finally he attained the jhanas. Even these monks who became arahants, they had a hard time fighting with their mind to attain jhanas. But because of his good background of Dhamma, understanding of Dhamma, the moment he attained jhana, he became enlightened. So this combination of jhana plus understanding the Dhamma is is essential. Okay, shall we end here?